checks that.
Yeah.
Is that it? I mean, I don't know exactly. Yeah. Maybe I'm
but he talked about other problems. He talked about there are some states which allow mail-in ballots to come in the day of the election and then allow for several days even after. As long as the postmark is the day of the election, they can count it 5 days, 6 days later.
Right. That's what happened last time.
Oh, yes.
Pennsylvania.
Yes.
In particular.
Yeah.
You know, I was back when that happened, I was going, how is it that Florida can get their votes in the day of or the night of? Okay. And they have the third most populated state in America.
Mm-hmm.
And they get their votes in because I think they pre-count.
Yeah.
I think they pre-count.
Yes.
In other words, by pre-count, I mean they count as they go instead of waiting till post-election day and then at midnight start counting all these thousands and like Pennsylvania did.
Yeah, the Florida results you will hear the night of the election.
Yeah. Yeah, and as I say, they got like 23 million people.
Yeah.
They're you got, let's see, California has the most people I'm talking about. Texas is second, most populated, and I want to say now Florida's third. They bypassed New York
in the last 2 or 3 years, I believe.
I think
you're
so.
Right. Yeah.
I think so.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, anyway, go ahead, Chris.
Well, a lot more people, I should say, are going to be watching CNN tonight than they have all year, and that's because CNN is going to this evening, tonight actually, air a pre-recorded sit-down interview with Vice President Kamala Harris and her running mate, Governor Tim Walz of Minnesota. This will be the first sit-down interview that Vice President Harris has done with media in a very long time. But a number of her critics are saying she still needs to show that she can do this job by doing an interview that is live, that isn't prepared, that isn't recorded, where perhaps she and or the network work together to edit her thoughts. And why in the world does she have to have her running mate at her side?
Yes. That's the highly unusual part of this, is that she's going to have Governor Tim Walz, her running mate, sitting there with her. And people are saying, okay, wait a minute. Why do you have to have him there? And there's potential for awkwardness, too, although this is a pre-recorded interview. So what you're going to see is the polished product tonight. And a lot of people are wondering, well, how tough is the Dana Bash is going to be the CNN anchor who's asking the questions. How tough is she going to be? Is she going to go into the Harris flip-flops on Medicare, on the border, you name it?
Fracking.
Is she going to get into that?
So that when is that now going to come?
9 p.m. Eastern.
Yeah.
Tonight.
Mm-hmm. Tonight. They're going to play it back.
It's not live.
Nope.
No.
I don't think that Vice President Harris's team would have. I mean, we'll see. I just don't think they would. They don't want to risk a live interview.
Mm.
Now CNN, are they an honest broker in this? Their record shows no.
Yeah.
That they are very liberal and they typically support the Democrats' position. There have been exceptions. You will find exceptions along the way where, Jake Tapper will say something, you go, wow, that's fair, or they'll, but typically there's a reason why CNN is viewed as a very liberal network, because that's their reputation.
She chose them. That's how this worked.
Yeah.
She chose, now there's a reason, obviously, because they have a reputation of being friendly to the Democratic Party.
Yeah. So that's tonight and airs at 9 Central?
9 Eastern, 8 o'clock Central.
On CNN. How long is the interview?
I don't know. I would guess an hour at least. Maybe longer.
I can't imagine it going longer than an hour. That's going to be, we'll see how it goes, but why do you think she has him there? She may have him there as a, safety net.
Like
talking about Waltz. I'm talking about
kind of like an attorney stepping in to answer the questions.
Listen, she's just not very good on her feet.
And that's why he's there. He is there. She'll give a response. I'm making a prediction. She'll give a response, and then he'll chime in and say, and also.
Right. Fill in the blanks.
Yes, fill in the blanks.
I wonder how well they really know each other. How long have they been friends? So, you know what I'm saying? Because sometimes these relationships are like put together on the fly.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you look at probably I'm thinking John McCain and Sarah Palin. I can't imagine. I don't think they had that much of a relationship before they, you know what I'm saying, before
Yeah.
they joined up to be a ticket. So if you don't know somebody that well personally,
Mm-hmm.
it can even get more awkward in a situation where you're both being interviewed.
Yeah.
You know, because a good interviewer will say, "Well, you said this,
Mm-hmm.
Vice President Harris, when you were senator,
Mm-hmm.
and you said this, Governor, when you were a House member." That those things don't jive, so
Yeah.
to speak. You know
Well,
what I'm saying?
and this was promoted as Harris's first interview in 39 days since she started campaigning. So it's going to be interesting to see how Dana Bash, the CNN anchor, is she going to split the questions between the two so that, Harris can sit over here and we all watch Tim Walz respond to something?
Now, one thing I think in knowing their history and their voting record and their comments, these two, Harris and Waltz, they're both hard lefties.
They
And-
are.
Right.
and they don't typically that I've seen apologize for it.
Mm-mm.
And they make it sound like, they make it it's sunshine communism. It's what I call it. They'll make it sound wonderful. Like Tim Walz, the governor of Minnesota, he'll say, something like one man's socialism is another man's caring for your neighbor.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it sounds so wholesome and all
Sure.
American.
Right.
Sure.
When you listen to him, I remember here we played this. Governor Walz, he was saying some speech needs to be shut down. You remember this?
Mhm.
And we
It doesn't
and he said,
right.
when we said we don't need to apologize for it. Hate speech. Well, he doesn't. It's whatever he defines.
Yes.
Anytime you let government do that is a bad
I
idea.
know, but he believes in hate speech being and other things that he would say are misinformation.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, who gets to decide what's misinformation? The liberals do. The
Mhm.
Democrats do, in his worldview.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? So
Mm-hmm.
anyway, we'll see. But they are both. Waltz may be to the left of Harris. I don't know that it's close, but I think one time she was voted the most liberal member of the United
She
States.
was.
Senate.
She was.
To the left of Bernie, some would say. I
Yes.
did fact
Yeah.
check myself a minute ago to better answer your question. This is a 1-hour interview tonight on CNN.
Okay. Of course, Harris and Waltz, especially Harris, has been, they've been hammered by some for not doing a live interview. Well, this isn't even this is a taped interview. That's not live. But again, you may say, well, that's not right. A presidential candidate should be put under the scrutiny of media interviews and doing live gaggles, as they call them.
Which Donald Trump does all the time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Trump never shies away from interviews
Nope.
or doing the. You remember he used to do the rope line? We talked about
Oh,
that.
yeah.
That's what I'm talking about. Gaggle, where you have a gaggle of reporters just firing questions at you.
Mm-hmm.
And but she is that's not her strength. Is live thinking on your feet, explaining. Explaining issues. You remember that infamous interview she did with Lester Holt on NBC, which
Oh,
I think
yes.
was taped itself.
We've been to the border.
Yeah, he said you haven't been to the border, and then she said,
I haven't been to Europe either.
"Yeah, I didn't. Nobody even understood what." And then she says, "I don't even understand your question."
Mhm.
I'm
Why are
like,
you asking the question?
Pretty simple question. Why haven't you been to the border? That's not
Yeah.
that's not algebra.
No.
Okay, and so she doesn't. She was just like a deer in headlights, and so she was. There's a reason she stayed out of the media even before she was announced as going to be the presumptive Democrat
Yeah.
candidate.
Well, because, the description was Madam Word Salad.
Oh, yeah.
There's plenty of evidence of that out
we
there.
might get that tonight too, even on a tape delay.
Well,
I don't know.
the big test for Vice President Kamala Harris is going to be a week from this coming Tuesday. That's the debate. That debate will be live
Okay,
with
you're
Donald
right.
Trump.
You're right.
Now, ABC.
Where is that going to be? And who's hosting and all that?
ABC is doing it.
Okay, ABC. Who's the interviewers?
I think it's moderator Jake
Moderator.
Tapper. Not Jake Tapper.
Big
it's-
Tabber CNN.
Correct. It is. I'm going to get the names. I'm having one of those moments.
Yeah.
Rick Perry moment where he like forgot
It's
something
bad
and then remembered.
when you don't even remember what to call your moment.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
I am 42 now.
I know you a forgetful moment and you can't even remember what to call it. Are you
David Muir and somebody whose name I'm looking up here.
David Muir? Okay, I know who
He's one of the rankers.
Yeah,
Yeah.
on ABC.
Yeah.
So they'll be doing. Are the mics going to be cut off when you're not speaking? When it's not your turn?
That's been one of the discussions this week. Initially, Donald Trump said, I'll go with the same rules that we had with Biden, which Mike's cut off.
Yeah.
Then, according to what we've been reading, the Harris campaign in recent days has said, no, we want hot mics all the time. And the belief is that Harris is asking for that so she can have some moments when she can lecture Donald Trump about, I'm speaking, you need to be quiet, for example.
Yeah. Don't mansplain that to me.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Lindsay Davis is the other moderator.
I'm not familiar with her.
Yeah.
Is
You
it
know,
her?
I'm surprised George Stephanopoulos wasn't one of the questioners.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, quite frankly, the last interview that now Biden, the last debate, Biden and Trump, Trump benefited from the microphones being turned off. But you know, the visual imagery of poor Joe Biden during that debate was so disastrous.
Yeah.
It really didn't matter.
Right.
All people were going was, this fellow looks like he's lost, wandering around.
Yeah.
Doesn't comprehend questions. I mean, it was terrible.
Right. Trump almost didn't need to say anything.
No, he didn't, and he didn't.
Yeah.
He had a couple of one-liners or whatever, but he didn't.
For about the first 35, 40 minutes, he just kind of, sat back, let Biden do his thing,
Yeah.
and then he responded. And then he became Trump, and they argued about golf scores and all that stuff.
Well, we'll see. But I think personally it benefits. It would benefit Trump if the microphones were cut off when they weren't talking, when it wasn't their turn. But if not, some people would say, well, no, I want to hear the back and forth. I want to hear the give and take. I want to, if they get rude, I want to know it,
Mhm.
for example.
Yep.
But she'll be ready for the soundbite moments. They'll prepare her for, okay, whatever Trump says to this, or whenever he tries to, put you down, so to speak, as vice president, then you say this.
Yes.
To get your soundbite moment.
Yes.
That'll be repeated,
Mhm.
for the next in the 24-hour news cycle.
Yeah.
I mean, the liberal media, and that's what most of them are. They favor her, and they
Mhm.
detest Trump. So,
Yep. It'll be it will be live, and so I'm interested to see how that goes.
well, I was looking at the Real Clear Politics polls again. They're just not changing very much at all. It's just, if you look at the Real Clear Politics, which is the average of all the polls,
Mhm.
and those swing states, really the ones that matter.
Mhm.
National polls don't really say a lot, don't really mean a lot, quite frankly, because so many states now, probably 40 states, how they're going to vote. Doesn't matter, if you put a baked potato up
Yes.
as the candidate in Massachusetts, they're going to vote for, if the baked potato is a Democrat, they're going to vote for the baked potato.
Yep.
I don't care what kind of toppings you have on it, they're
Yep.
going to vote. And then, and in Tennessee, you could put a baked potato up against a Democrat, as long as it's a Republican, and the baked potato is going to win.
Yes.
I don't know why I'm stuck on baked potato, but you get the idea.
Yeah.
In other words, there are probably 40 states that are very predictable, but there is about 7 to 10 states that are up in the air every election cycle. And it's been this way since Gore versus Bush. These swing states. Now, Florida used to be a swing state, but hasn't been.
No.
Recently, Ohio used to be a swing state, but it hasn't been.
No.
Recently, it's been red. They've been red states.
But you just watch where the candidates are going. For instance, Harris and Waltz are in Georgia today. They're doing a bus tour. They've been there for 2 days.
Okay.
Trump, Wisconsin and Michigan.
Yeah.
They're doing a lot of work, especially J.D. Vance is spending a lot of time in those states.
It's just stunning to me still that Georgia's in play as a Georgia has always been red.
Mm-hmm.
But from what I've read, READ is that so many people now move to the Metro Atlanta area
Mm-hmm.
that from out of state and from
Yeah.
out of the country and moved here, that it's changed the dynamics. Most of those people vote Democrat.
Yeah.
And so it's changed the statewide dynamics when you put all the votes together. You know, you go out of Atlanta, it's all red
Yes.
with maybe kind of a couple of blue.
Mm-hmm.
Blue exceptions, but they're not very big. but it's changed Georgia because you look, they have 2 Democrat senators now,
Mm-hmm.
and when you have
Both from the Atlanta area.
yeah. So now they do have a Republican governor,
Right.
Yes.
Brian Kemp, who I think won by 7 points against Stacey Abrams last time. So it's still very viable that a Republican wins, but Trump, Trump is. I mean, I'm not criticizing Trump in this point. I'm just stating a fact. He's so divisive that people might vote for Brian Kemp, the Republican in Georgia, but then they'll vote against Trump.
Yes.
They'll vote against Trump because they don't like him or
Yeah.
they don't like his behavior or whatever like that.
Which is why the Republicans, I've seen Kemp in interviews now twice this week saying, we've buried the hatchet. That was a long time ago. It's all about getting Trump elected for the betterment of the country, et cetera, et cetera. So the Kemp election machine, according to the governor, is all in on Donald Trump.
Yeah.
Yeah, they that's how politics works. So they attack each other, and it happens on both sides of the aisle. And then in the end, they get together and hold hands and sing "Kumbaya."
Yes.
So that's how it goes. So, because Trump, that was really weird. Because a couple of weeks ago, it wasn't 2 or 3 weeks ago, Trump is out there calling Governor of Georgia Little Brian.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
In Georgia, I think it was.
Yeah, he was in Georgia. Trump likes to pull people's pants down in public, and that's what he was doing with Brian Kemp.
Mm-hmm.
And Kemp fired back and said, I'm working to defeat Harris. I wish you would. And by the way, leave my family out of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That was a tweet that Brian Kemp, the governor of Georgia, put out. So they were into it.
Mhm.
But now all's well, Fred.
All is well.
Okay,
Yes.
all's well. But they have, Brian Kemp said, buried the hatchet. Is that what he said? I don't know if that's exactly what he said, but we're going to move, we're moving forward to win the state of Georgia in November.
Right. I will say this. I'm looking at Real Clear Politics electoral map, and if the election was today, Real Clear has Trump winning 287 to 251. We're talking electoral votes. And they're including
270 is the magic number.
It
right?
is, yes. And Real Clear Politics is including Florida, Arizona, and Missouri in that prediction. The reason I bring up those states specifically is because Arizona, Missouri, and Florida are among the several states voting on abortion this November. So if you are the Trump-Vance campaign, if you are a Republican, you should be doing what you can to make sure you get out enough votes in those states I just mentioned, because they are going to be churning out a ton of people trying to vote for abortion in states like Arizona, Missouri, and Florida.
Yeah. All right. You're listening to today's issues on American Family Radio. Fred, Tim, and Chris. We shall return momentarily. Dr. Alex McFarland will be on with us in just a few minutes. And so stay with us.
It's my turn.
Here is your host for My Turn, Don Wildman.
I stood again last summer in the ruins of the Colosseum in Rome, As I did, my mind wandered back to what the Colosseum represented in its day. There people, 50,000 of them, would gather to watch man and man or man and beast go against each other to the death. It was a national pastime, officially endorsed and encouraged by the powers that were. The crowd went there to see blood, and they weren't often disappointed. After two humans, considered as nothing more than animals by the Romans, fought until one had conquered the other, the conqueror waited while the Caesar and or the crowd made the decision, life or death. More times than not, it was death, blood, gushing, red, real blood, spilled on the earth, rushing over the body. The crowd delighted in that. Cheers went up as the blood came out. It was a thrilling, exciting sight to behold in ancient Rome. There were those who spoke against the ritual, but they were a small, vocal minority in the eyes of those who controlled the event and gained financially from it. After all, it was what the people wanted to see. No one was forced to attend the event. It was just entertainment, nothing more, nothing less. And those who put on the show certainly had done nothing they were ever ashamed of. Their job was to give the people what they want, and that was violence, gory, sadistic, cruel violence. Not far from the Colosseum was the Caesar's palace, the glory of Rome. There they had their sexual orgies. No holds barred. The people were only animals, and sex was a part of life. There was no morality attached to sex. Adultery, homosexuality, fornication, bestiality, sodomy, incest, you take your choice. In Rome, it was all accepted. Rome had no hang-ups, no narrow-minded prudes trying to force their values on others. Rome was sexually liberated. The glory of Rome, freedom without restraint, freedom without responsibility, pure, complete, absolute freedom, total and complete acceptance. Today, the glory of Rome is gone. Nothing more than a dot in the history book of time. The glory of Rome faded, replaced by memories, and destruction. We don't have the Caesars, such as Nero, Tiberius, and Titus today. Today we have ABC, CBS, NBC, and Fox. Instead of the blood and the dust of the Colosseum, now we have it in our living rooms in full living color. Our sex isn't relegated to only the palaces today. Now it comes with increasing visibility into our homes and our minds. Some speak out today, but they're prudes, a small vocal minority who would force their values on others. And our violence and sex, just as it was in ancient Rome, is a real money-making proposition. After all, someone has to give the people what they want to satiate their desires. The glory of Rome. It can never happen again, can it? The unbridled use of freedom. Humans being what they are, they learn from past experiences. They know what lies ahead if a certain path is followed, so they follow other paths. We've learned from history, right? Culture is taught, and I might add also, sold at a handsome profit. Rome will never fall again. That doesn't bother me. What does is that perhaps 2,000 years down the road, a writer might perhaps sit at his typewriter and write a story about the glory of America. It will probably begin. I stood again last summer in the ruins of the studios of CBS.
This has been My Turn with Don Wildman, a production of the American Family Association.
In Him, we were also chosen, having been predestined according to the plan of Him who works out everything in conformity with the purpose of His will. Ephesians 1:11.
American Family Radio.
This is Today's Issues. Email your comments to comments@afr.net. Past broadcasts of Today's Issues are available for listening and viewing in the archive at afr.net. Now, back to more of Today's Issues.
Good morning, everyone. We're back for the second half hour of the Thursday edition of Today's issues. And
August 29th.
August 29th. And Ed was here. No, we'll ask Brent. How many days to Christmas? He's going to find that out for us.
I know we got, I think, a year and a half till Election Day gets here. Huh?
Yes.
Wow. You talk about a country worn out
Yes.
by the time it gets here. We seem like we're in constant political mode, constant campaign mode, I should say.
You know, when I moved here 27 years ago now, I was told the United States never stops election campaigns.
Yeah.
And it's true.
Yeah.
It never stops.
Yeah. I know. Go ahead.
118 days, Fred.
118 days to get your shopping done.
Oh, for Christmas, till
Christmas.
Christmas gets here.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, all right, Tim, Fred, and Chris, and joining us now from, I think, North Carolina. I think that's where Alex is, Dr. Alex McFarland. Good morning, Alex.
Good morning, everybody.
You home?
I am not. I'm actually in Colorado preaching at Vista Grande Baptist Church in Colorado Springs.
How do you know those folks?
When I was working for Dr. Dobson and Angie and I lived out here for 8 years, that's where we went to church.
Oh.
Oh, okay. Well,
And
you
so
know, Steve Jordahl worked there at Focus on the Family for a while.
We knew each other back in the day, yes.
Okay.
And lot of good friendships came out of that. And you know, it's always a blessing when you were a part of a church and years later they invite you back to preach.
That's a good sign.
Yeah, that's a good sign.
Absolutely. That's a good sign. Well, I wanted to ask you, we could talk about the news of the day. I'm sure you could do that well and might want to, but I wanted to focus first. I thought, you know, when we do programs here on American Family Radio, we like to have some perspective. You know what I'm saying? And perspective is a biblical worldview perspective fundamentally. Everything we're experiencing here on earth is temporal. The old expression,
Praise God.
This too will pass, as they say, and we all pass, right? After our time is up that God gives us here on earth. So everything is, today's poll, yeah, it matters for the future of our country in terms of, you know, where we're going to go and how we're going to live and our freedoms and all that. But really and truly, what matters is what the Scripture says, right?
Amen.
About life. So looking back through the Bible, I wanted to pick out a few characters, and characters, I mean, not that they're fictional, characters as in people who really lived and that God gives us their life story in the Scripture. And one of them was King David, right?
Amen.
And so I wanted you to give us a thumbnail of David and about his life there, if you would, Alex.
Oh, wow. That's just wonderful. One of my favorite figures of the Bible and certainly the Old Testament, King David, was the shepherd boy who became the one they call Israel's greatest king. He was, in many ways, pictorial of King Jesus, who would later come. Maybe the most, you know, it's interesting. He's like hero and anti-hero. I mean, in 1 Samuel 17, David kills Goliath, the Goliath of Gath, who had held the armies of Israel hostage for 40 days. David killed Goliath. That's very famous. But then anti-hero, he also committed adultery with Bathsheba, put a hit on Uriah the Hittite.
Her husband.
Yeah, caused Uriah to get killed. But then David was very repentant. He collected the building materials for the temple, but the Lord didn't let David build the temple because he was a man of war. His son Solomon built the temple. And so David is amazing. Now, what's interesting, as I'm sure you guys know, skeptics at one time questioned whether or not David existed, but he obviously did. He is absolutely historical. And if we ever get to go to Israel, we will go to what's called the City of David. And there's this palace you can tour through. I mean, it's like rocks being excavated, but you can look out over the Kidron Valley and see this view that David himself would have seen. Now, what's interesting is back in 1993, in a place called Tel Dan, people pronounce it Tel Dan, D-A-N, but a lot of Jewish people I know pronounce it as like Tel Dan. But they found an inscription from 900 BC that references, quote, the house of David. So David is real. Everything we read in the Bible about King David is absolutely historically true. And he was one of Israel's greatest kings and a forerunner to Jesus, the King of Kings.
How long did he rule? Do you know?
I don't know. That's a good question, Tim.
You know, Fred?
Mm-mm.
Does it say?
It may, I suppose there's some dating there.
There is a verse that said he ruled when he passes away or goes to sleep with his fathers, as some translations say. There is a verse that says he reigned in such and such for X amount of years and such for X amount of years. I Googled it. It's Google, okay? 40
Okay.
years is what the internet
Okay.
I was going to say that figure. 40 years keeps being repeated in Scripture, Alex, a lot. It seems to be a dating period. Alex, I was going to ask you, when you're teaching this, when you're preaching on this, and it gets to that point of David's failure with Bathsheba, what is the application for today? You know, people would ask, what happened to David? David was so strong. Like he had opportunities when King Saul was hunting him down. He had opportunities to kill Saul, and he didn't. But we get to this point when he's at the pinnacle of his power, and he has this failure. What's the application there for us?
Well, you know, there's an application. There's that old saying, idle hands are the devil's workshop. You know, you read that as it's leading up to the sexual sin with Bathsheba. It says, in the time when kings went off to war, David was back home, you know, chilling out. First of all, you know, he was up on the rooftop and he sees a woman bathing, and he gives that second look. I think some of our application is, we're supposed to be about the Lord's business and be proactive in attending to our Christian growth. I know there's time for rest and there's time for vacation, but be careful about slothfulness and being idle. Also, be careful about lingering over temptation. You know, temptation is one thing, but David acted on that temptation. The other thing is abuse of power, and we've seen that in people that occupied the White House. You know, I'm thinking of Bill Clinton abusing power with Monica Lewinsky. David abused his power, and he called for Bathsheba. And she, being a subject of the kingdom, she, you know, was compliant and came, and then he impregnated her. But I want to say this, too, about David is that, you know, failure is not final. Now, sin is wrong, and it's tragic when Christian leaders or any believer sins. But in Psalm 51, David was very repentant, and he said, restore to me the joy of your salvation. He didn't say restore my salvation, but he did repent and he wept. Now there is forgiveness and there's restoration. There's also repercussions. But let me say, I think in the life of David, the warning is that even the best of God's people can stumble and fall. The good news is God is God of mercy, and he will forgive if we repent and turn back to him. But I got to say this, guys, about the times in which we live. I love 1 Samuel 17. And maybe there's a lesson here. Follow Christ even at the risk of being misunderstood. Because listen, he goes down there, and his older brother Eliab, in 1 Samuel 17, Eliab goes, David, you know, hey, punk, you're supposed to be back on the farm watching the livestock. You've just come down here to see the battle. And David says 5 words as he's picking up 5 smooth stones. He says, is there not a cause? And guys, that stirs my heart. Because let me just say about the moment in which we live. You know, in 60-some days we have an election. All of us should be praying, maybe fasting and praying. My fellow pastors, you guys need to be preaching some sermons that could potentially get you fired. Is there not a cause? You bet there is a cause. And what I love about King David, Tim, yeah, I mean, we can talk about the failure, the restoration. There's, of course, Absalom, one of his sons, rebelled. But here's the thing. David was a man after God's own heart. He was fearless when it came time to standing up for truth and for the Lord. He didn't argue with his brother Eliab. He didn't waste any bandwidth on his critics. He just calmly said, there's a cause. And he says to that Philistine, and we can say this to the world, really, you come with a shield and a spear, you come with viewpoint suppression and tech censorship and election fraud. I come to you in the name of the Lord our God, whom you have defied, and this day God will give you into our hand. And guys, there is a cause. And David, the warrior, brave soldier of the living God, I think those are some of the takeaways for our own times, that we can be valiant for truth just as he was.
Amen.
Talking to Dr. Alex McFarland, I just got one more question. Then, Alex is on this afternoon. Are you going to be on with Bert live?
Well, yes, Jeff Chambly and I actually, Bert
Jeff?
is on the road preaching a revival this week. So all this week we're in Romans chapter 1, and it's Jeff Chambly and myself.
Okay, this afternoon at 3:05 Central Time, right here on AFR. Tim, Fred, Chris, and Alex. One more question about King David, Shepherd Boy David, later King David. Did he write the Psalm, all the Psalms?
He didn't write them all.
The book of Psalms? Go ahead.
He wrote most of them. You know, David wrote a lot of the Psalms, and, I think 75 or 80 of the 150 Psalms.
You can tell which ones, really,
Yeah.
if you read them, because it's the same style over and over again, right?
Yeah. And it's interesting. David wrote at least half of the Psalms, and his son Solomon, who also reigned for 40 years, wrote 3,000 Proverbs. So David and Solomon,
they didn't have much idle time. Don't seem to me.
And of course, my goodness, some of the most beautiful language the world has ever heard or pondered. I think about the 23rd Psalm, and of course, I mentioned Psalm 51 and Psalm 119, which is a tribute to the Scriptures. And so David is definitely somebody worth contemplating, learning of, and in some ways emulating.
Yeah. Well, the fact that all you need to say is King David, and even today, everybody in the world, most everybody in the world knows who you're talking about.
Yes.
Because he's that big a figure on the historical stage in world history. I'm talking about King David of Israel. All right. Thank you so much, Alex. Take care. We hope you have. So, are you preaching? When are you preaching?
Today through Sunday.
Okay. Today's through Sunday. Some kind of conference there?
Yeah, doing biblical worldview.
Okay.
Trying to, as we say, rally the troops.
Gotcha. All right. Take care, Alex. Appreciate it.
Blessings.
Okay. It's Dr. Alex McFarland.
It's a good idea. No, this great characters right now in my daily devotion dealing in Judges. Just been reading the last couple of days about Gideon. Very much there's some comparisons you can make with David. Gideon, God used him in a mighty way to chase out the bad guys out of Israel on both sides of the river there. But then he had a failure too. He took many wives and a concubine and got into all kinds of problems with that.
Many wives and a concubine?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, and that still boggles my mind.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Solomon, 1,000 wives and concubines. I can't imagine that kind of thinking, but I guess it was more normal in those days.
Chris has got a smirk on his face.
No, I heard a joke once that Solomon was a smart man, but he had 1,000 mother-in-laws. That wasn't a good idea.
Oh, my word.
I don't know how you manage that. I really don't.
It's probably why he wrote the Proverbs.
Yeah.
I'm busy. Yeah.
How many wives?
1,000 wives and concubines. I forget 700 and 300. I forgot how that divides out.
That's a lot of receptions right there, though. Think about it. I mean, that's too many.
That's a
You know
whole
what I'm
lot.
saying? Did he marry 10 at a time, or how did that work? Do you know?
You know, I have to figure there's some of these he didn't even know very well.
Right.
Right.
It's just, it was
He
convenient.
declared.
It doesn't even mention them, really. He was married to Pharaoh's daughter.
Oh, yeah.
That was one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, who are you?
Huh?
Well, I'm wife number 352.
Say my name.
Here are my papers.
Honest.
It says here I get to see the king in September
That's right. Of next year.
of next year. Oh, my word.
Yeah.
That was a big thing, wasn't it?
Well,
Multi-wives and
what I've read,
concubines and all that stuff.
it was a representation of power.
Yeah. Yeah.
I call it a representation of why are you getting yourself in trouble?
Right. All right, you're listening to today's issues. Next story.
I
Chris.
do want to point this out because we had a story on it, and we'll continue to follow up on this. Earlier this month, the Southern Poverty Law Center wrote an article on its website, and their headline is this: Debunking ADF, or Alliance Defending Freedom's Debanking Conspiracy Theory. As we have long covered on AFN.net and discussed on this program, Alliance Defending Freedom has been sounding the alarm over Christians and conservatives and their organizations being debanked. In other words, going to a bank and being told, hey, we've closed your account. It's too much risk. Unbeknownst to the people.
Because of your political views.
Because of your political or religious views, yes.
Right.
So ADF has been sounding the alarm over this. We've covered it. I'll share links to what I'm sharing here. But Southern Poverty Law Center, who does not like the Alliance Defending Freedom, they refer to them as a hate group, anti-LGBTQ, all these things. They put out a piece saying debunking ADF's debanking conspiracy theory, saying they're just trying to scare people or whatnot. Responding to this is ADF attorney Jeremy Tedesco, who on Washington Watch said responding to this article from the SPLC is like, quote, responding to Clown World, clip 9.
The one hand doesn't know what the other hand is doing over at SPLC's headquarters because they are one of the biggest proponents of urging financial institutions to debank people they disagree with, namely Alliance Defending Freedom, where I work, Family Research Council, and several other Christian mainstream ministries that they disagree with, and they are actively urging financial institutions to debank us. Yet they come out with an article saying that we're making the whole thing up. So it is really laughable. They really have become very much clown world over there. It's hard to take them seriously, but every once in a while we respond like this because, look, debanking is a serious issue. It is happening.
Now, I do want to direct our listeners to our Today's Issues Facebook page. I'll share a link to that discussion with Jeremy just a moment ago that we just played. But in the interview he mentioned a couple of examples. Sam Brownback went to a bank, found out his group that he had started there to promote religious freedom didn't have an account anymore. Various organizations blocked, like a Tennessee-based missionary group to Uganda, saying there was too much risk in giving you a bank.
We had a credit card processing company turn us off overnight.
Yep.
About 5 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Now we got that. It was some trauma there for a while. We got it worked out, figured out. But that has happened. Now, was the SPLC behind it or not? I don't know. Except that the Southern Poverty Law Center, they're based in Montgomery, and they issue a hate group list, I think annually, and we always make it.
Yeah.
And once you're on there, you're eternally on their hate. There's nothing you can do. Not that we would change our views or our message, but there's nothing you can do to get off their list. And they'll go back. They got quotes on there from my dad from 1989 or something, taken out of context to prove. Now it may not be in that exact year, but what they do is to prove that they got Brian Fisher on there. If you look up SPLC and AFA, they'll have Brian Fisher's picture on there, and Brian hasn't worked for us for a few years,
Several years, yeah.
But they'll take a quote from Brian out of context and use it to say, hey, this is why this proves this group's a hate group. So
it always amazes me the groups that preach tolerance, demonstrate the most intolerance.
Right.
They're tolerant of people who agree with them.
Right.
That's their
Oh,
that's how it works.
for the SPLC, if you look at their hate map, their hate group map, again, here's how this works. Just people know, well, what does this matter? Well, the SPLC will put out a hate group list.
Yes.
The mainstream media, uncritically, reports on it.
Yeah.
Because they're in cahoots.
Yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
So and the mainstream media will say, well, according to CNN or whoever, I'm just using them as an example, would say, or the AP or somebody would say, American Family. Well, according to the SPLC, they're a hate group.
Yeah.
See how this works?
Sure.
And so that gets out there, and then that gets on websites and so forth. So that's how you get identified. There's no real substance to it. It's just that they're trying to spin you and create a conjecture about your views. They can't stand, like the Family Research Council, Alliance Defending Freedom, but they'll put you on a hate group list, so you're a hate group.
Right.
Especially if you have traditional views about homosexuality. That they can't. If you say homosexuality is a sin and shouldn't be promoted, they'll say, well, that's by definition, that's
A hate statement.
That's a hate statement. Now they'll say, you said other things, but here's the deal. So that to the point about debanking. So at some companies, especially in the finance world, credit cards, whatever like that, they may say they'll have an activist or two on their maybe board of directors. We heard from a big bank. Now, nothing ever happened, but we heard from a big bank that we were using, at least partially, and they used SPLC. So what about this? Now, we answered them, and that was it. It was nothing big deal. I'm just saying the intention of the SPLC hate group list is to discredit, i.e., and debank groups that they cite as hate groups. But I'll give you one other example. I looked at their hate map, the SPLC's, one time, and they had one of their hate groups was a little store like 25 miles from where we are, and the store, which I'd never heard of, the store sold Civil War memorabilia. Okay, so therefore they sold Confederate flags. Okay, that was listed as one of their hate groups.
Yeah.
You see how this works?
Oh, sure.
So anyway, and they're funded by the political left, Hollywood left. They got more money than they know what to do with.
They're not in poverty.
No, they're not in poverty. Anyway, you're listening to Today's Issues on American Family Radio. Go ahead.
I do have one other big update here. The dominoes are perhaps falling in the DEI world. Ford has become the latest high-profile American company to pump brakes on DEI. That's the headline this morning from USA Today. Ford joins the likes of Harley, Lowe's, and John Deere in recent months to scale back diversity, equity, and inclusion, or DEI efforts.
Well, this is interesting because they're reversing themselves. These companies are reversing themselves. I think they see no value in this any longer, Fred.
I think what they are measuring is that more and more Americans are saying, I've had enough of this.
Yeah.
These DEI policies, I mean, it's still scary at the federal government level. They're still using this. What was the story the other day for the nuclear program?
Oh, they wanted to, like, queer the nuke.
Yeah, have you heard this, Tim?
I don't know.
They brought LGBTQ issues into the nuclear program.
It's the federal government.
Oh, really?
Yes. And they use it for hiring quotas.
Yeah,
and
it
all
was
that.
it was referred to by someone as queering the nuke program. That was their words.
Queering the nuke program. Okay. I think that was a song.
If it made sense, it wouldn't be government.
It was a heavy metal group sang that back in the 80s. Queering the what?
The nuke program. I found the link. I posted it.
All right. Well, I don't know how to. We got to get out of this segment right here. We're kind of going downhill. We'll be back in 5 minutes with Steve Paisley Jordahl.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast may not necessarily reflect those of the American Family Association or American Family Radio.
Faith, family, freedom. American Family Radio.
If God could speak, what would he say?
The Bible subjects itself to historical verification.
He says, we saw this.
We go to the Bible wanting to hear what the living God has to say to us.
When God speaks, what does he say?
The God who speaks. Visit stream.afa.net. This is American Family Radio, a listener-supported ministry of the American Family Association.
American Family News, I'm Rusty Pugh. Police in Nassau County, New York, making their first arrest under a new local law that bans face masks in public. Jessica Formoso of Fox New York TV affiliate WNYW reporting from Long Island.
Police say on Sunday a concerned Levittown resident called 911 reporting a suspicious man wearing a mask. Police say it was around 8 p.m. in Hicksville, right on the border of Levittown. 18-year-old Wesley Omar Ramirez Castillo was wearing all black and a black ski mask. After questioning him, police noticed something bulging from his waistband. It was a knife. Due to bail laws, he is back on the streets. Police telling us that he has ties to gangs. In Mineola, I'm Jessica Formoso, Fox News.
A lot of Republicans are asking who's in charge at the White House after Joe Biden spent last week and this week on vacation. The president vacationed in California, then flew back to Delaware for another break. Nebraska Senator Pete Ricketts wants to know who's running the country.
You were talking about Joe Biden being on vacation. How can we tell, right? The observation that there's a group of people running this without any leadership from Joe Biden is spot on. That's been my experience for the last 2 years. There's really nobody in charge.
Kamala Harris is sitting down for her first interview today with CNN. Although her campaign is so worried that she'll mess up that they're sending her VP candidate, Tim Walz, to sit by her side.
The interview will be pre-taped and air at 9 p.m. Eastern. Dana Bash will be asking the questions, so they're unlikely to be too taxing for the vice president, who's been running so far on vibes and a smile instead of any policy positions. Alex McFarland of Exploring the Word on AFR says any position that she's hinted at are either stolen from President Trump or a 180-degree flip-flop from what she ran on in 2020.
Kamala Harris is the non-candidate because she's not giving policy, unequivocal positions. She's not speaking unilaterally from conviction. She's an empty pantsuit.
He says her campaign is wise to hide her from the press. She doesn't speak very clearly off the cuff.
The queen of chefs when it comes to serving up word salad owes it to the American people to give an unscripted interview. She can't have Cliff Notes or a tutor there at her side to rescue her.
Today, her tutor/safety net is VP candidate Tim Walz, who's expected to step in should Harris get in over her head with, well, any substantive question.
If she cannot do a solo press conference live without a safety net, she is not worthy of any American's vote.
McFarland says the Democrat Party's gotten good at hiding candidates. They kept Joe Biden locked in his basement in 2020, likely to conceal the mental decline that eventually forced him from the race in 2024. I'm Steve Jordahl.
Meanwhile, Lucas Tomlinson tells us the Trump campaign has been critical of her lack of interviews, so they offer their own questions for her.
The Trump campaign was to help out, suggesting a few questions. If you are capable of lowering prices for Americans, why haven't you done it in the 3.5 years you've been in office? You say housing affordability would be a day one priority if you were elected. Why is it not a priority now? You co-sponsored Medicare for All and the Green New Deal. Do you still support these multi-trillion-dollar takeovers of the American economy? You talk about a lot about freedom. What about the freedom of Laken Riley, Rachel Morin, and Jocelyn Nangare? Why did you support executive actions like stopping construction of the border wall and halting deportations that intentionally unsecured the border?
Melissa Malden, a tourist from North Carolina who was stabbed in the face by a career criminal in a New Jersey airport, blames the judicial system for letting her attacker be on the streets in the first place.
They have failed me. They have failed others just by constantly giving this man just simple assault charges, putting him in jail for a little bit, and letting him be released. Somebody who's already stabbed multiple people, to me, I think should be being charged with attempted murder, not simple assault, and he shouldn't be allowed to walk the streets free with the rest of us harming others. And that's my main goal, is to get this story out so potentially he doesn't have a chance to harm anybody else like he's harmed me.
For American Family News, Almost TP.
As a nurse, I primarily work with children who are abused and exploited in trafficking, and I frequently see very unfair situations. We must talk about the issue of abuse. We can't base our actions on fear. We have to be faith-informed in what we do.
The Dr. Nurse Mama Show. For more from Dr. Jessica Peck, tune in at 2 p.m. Central on American Family Radio or on the podcast page at afr.net.
Today's Issues continues on AFR with your host, Tim Wildman, president of the American Family Association.
Hey, welcome back, everybody, to today's issues. Got 24 and a half more minutes to go in the program today. It's Thursday, August 29th, 2024. Tim, Fred Jackson, and now Steve Paisley Jordahl. Good morning, Brother Steve.
Good morning, Tim. Welcome back.
Thank you. Good to be back. Steve, we were talking to Alex McFarland last half hour, and he's out in Colorado Springs.
Yeah.
Did you know, did you go to church with him, or?
No, he went to
that other church?
Well, the church that he's, I can't remember the name of the church. I talked to him yesterday. Yes, we knew each other. We worked together at Focus.
Yeah.
I went to a church called Woodland Valley Chapel, which was the second largest church in Colorado Springs. We had about 3,000 members or so, and now I guess the church that he is preaching at, has grown tremendously. It's got more than 1,000.
How many employees did Focus on the Family have
at its height?
Yeah, I should know that. I want to say 1,200 or something like that.
Yeah, it was.
I can't imagine that payroll. That's unbelievable.
They have two massive buildings, three.
I've been there. I've been on their campus before. This was during the Dr. Dobson era.
Right. It hit its peak 2005, 2006, as far as I was there at the time, and it was just gangbusters. 2008 came around, and the economy crashed, and Dr. Dobson left the ministry. And
when did he leave?
About 2008, about the same time the economy crashed. And some of
did the economy crash because Dr. Dobson left?
Some people might chalk it up to that, but the housing crisis and everything. But Dr. Dobson, some of the supporters of Focus went with him to his new family talk.
Yeah, it was not a pretty. It was not a pretty.
It was a difficult
scene.
Time. It was a difficult time to be at the ministry, but it's leasing.
You did Family News in Focus.
I did.
I used to, I heard we aired that long before you came to work for us.
Then I've been on this station.
Yeah,
for a long time.
You've been on a long time with family. Who else did Family News in Focus? Back. We're talking back in the 90s and 2000s, huh?
Other reporters?
Yeah.
Stuart Shepard.
I remember that name. Yeah.
He's now with First Liberty. He's doing video for them. Kim Troby.
Don't know Kim.
Kim is a wonderful woman who's a great reporter.
Yeah. Anyway, I thought maybe some people might recognize those names.
Yeah.
Family News in Focus was a big deal on Christian radio for a long time.
We had a good following. It was very humbling to be part of.
All right, what's your first story for us?
Well, first of all, I want to tell you that I've been talking to all my Democrat friends and our Democrat listener here on AFR. They're a little nervous about the debate tonight. Afraid,
debate?
I'm sorry, the interview tonight. Afraid that Kamala might unwind and everything. But I want to tell you, be at peace, be at ease. She's got a man sitting by her side to rescue her. So.
Ooh. Oh, Steve, I don't think you're supposed to say that, huh? Bada boom.
Can I start with a couple stupid things before we get to real news?
Yeah, but you want to apologize for what you just did there?
Nah, not really.
Okay, you're gonna have to go home this afternoon to your wife.
I don't.
Okay.
She's laughing if she's listening.
The views and opinions expressed here by Steve Yardall do not necessarily reflect those of Fred Jackson or yours
Tell me
truly.
I'm wrong, though.
Yeah.
He is a man. and
Move on, Steve.
Okay.
Here's a hole. Here's a shovel.
All right.
Put the dirt back in.
There's a new endorsement for Kamala Harris, and it might not surprise anybody. Ben Stiller is endorsing Kamala Harris, a Hollywood guy.
The comic.
Yes, the comic. And let me read. He says, just very excited about moving forward, all the energy and excitement that's around the movement right now. Let me check my notes here. That's why I'm here, because it's time for a change. And it seems like that's happening.
Wait a minute. Ben Stiller, the comedian, is this a joke?
No.
Okay, so he says he's supporting Kamala Harris because he wants to see
it's time for change.
It's a time for change, yet it's Harris
from the
who's
Biden-Harris
the vice president of the United States now. And so he wants to change. So you change from Harris to Harris? That's the change he's looking for?
Apparently. I don't know where the change is going to come from, but he's excited about it.
What do you think he meant by this?
Well,
another genius remark by a Hollywood type.
I know, right?
Time for a change. Well,
time for a change.
Well, if he means let's move further to the left, I agree. I think a presidential Kamala administration would take this country even further to the left.
Yeah, you know what? These people like him.
Mm-hmm.
There's no telling how much money he has. I don't know what his net worth would be. Ben Stiller, I mean, he's been a huge star for 20 years or more, in especially comedy.
Yeah,
comedy films. There's no telling.
Son of Jerry Stiller and Mira. Remember her first name.
I want to see their answer when Harris and Waltz proposed their income tax.
Yeah.
Yes.
Huh?
Mm-hmm.
Because Harris and Waltz represent like Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren. If they had their way, there would be a 50% or more, maybe more, a 50% federal income tax on people making more than $1 million a year.
Yes.
That it's already like, isn't it like 30 something like that?
She's proposing a several $trillion tax increase.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is,
going to come out.
If you were to say to Ben Stiller, and don't enter politics into it, just say, hey, are you in favor of paying half your money to the federal government?
Yeah.
And he would probably go, no.
Yeah.
That's my money. I earned it.
Well, and Ben Stiller, how do you feel about unrealized capital gains?
Yeah.
Yeah. What's their stand on that? Yeah.
Kamala Harris wants to tax your unrealized capital gains. In other words, we think in 5 years the value of your business or property is going to go up by this much, but we're going to tax you for that projected gain right now.
Wow.
Or that the property has increased in value over the last 5 years. You haven't sold it. Your stocks have increased in value over the last 5 years.
And they would you to pay taxes on that?
They're still going to tax you on it.
Yes.
Now, it's highly unlikely anything like that would ever pass because there would probably be at least a few Democrats that would vote against it.
The rich ones, I'm thinking.
But, yeah. So, and the Republicans would never go for that.
Yep.
Never go for that.
There's an old joke that says liberals will tax anything that moves.
Yeah,
you know
that's right.
That's the way they are.
But all these Hollywood, actors and actresses, and they're it's a groupthink deal. They're almost, with a rare exception, they're almost all lefties, and you got a few of them that aren't.
Yes, very few.
At least the high-profile ones are lefties, and I just want to see. I would like them to be asked directly about the taxation proposals of the Democrats that they support.
Yeah,
because I just don't. Nobody's gonna say, hey,
sign me up.
Sign me up for 60-70% federal income tax.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? All right, next story.
All right, just another real quick. Congratulations to Johnson & Johnson. They are innovating medicine. They are forwarding and trying to bring gender equity to prostate cancer care. Let that sink in.
I am. You see my gender equity to
prostate,
something only a male can get.
Hmm.
Okay. Now, what? Explain. Give us some context.
Do they try to
here, Steve.
explain that?
Yeah.
It
Johnson.
says, for decades, researchers, healthcare professionals, patients, and their loved ones have come together to advance treatment and care for people diagnosed with prostate cancer. Clinical studies have been centerpiece for collaboration across the disease continuum, from early local disease to late-stage metastatic prostate cancer. Yet, LGBTQIA plus community and especially transgender individuals have historically been excluded from clinical research programs.
Where are you reading this from? Like the Babylon Bee or something?
No, this is an announcement from Johnson & Johnson.
Okay.
Like I said, I want to get
well
through a couple
again.
I was treated for prostate cancer back 7 or 8 years ago.
Yeah.
At a clinic in Knoxville. I did not see one female being treated for prostate cancer.
I'm shocked.
Yeah.
Not one.
Yeah, and if you go to the OBGYN and they're doing ultrasounds and checking pregnant people, guess what? 100% female.
There's
That's
an
why.
interesting exchange between, I think it was Ben Shapiro and one of these college debate speeches, and he talks with the students afterwards, and one of the students was all on for this gender, binary, the non-binary stuff and women and everything, and she was an EMT, and he said, well, okay, let me ask you a question. If you came across a patient that was clearly a man and said he was having problems miscarrying, would you check? No.
Yeah, it's idiocy. I mean, what was the story too about Governor Walz in Minnesota putting I know there are kids listening.
Feminine products.
Feminine products in boys' bathrooms in the public schools. Was that true?
It is.
Mm-hmm.
Huh?
Yes.
I mean, I heard about that. I figured it was true. It was on like Fox or somewhere. I saw that. But huh? And is he ever comment on that or have been asked about that?
Not that I know. I mean, maybe tonight. But
if I were Trump, I'd bring that up at the debate.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you?
Yeah. Of course.
And then ask. I would make that an issue, and then I would say, I want to know how Vice President Harris feels about boys playing girls' sports.
Yeah.
I would force that issue into because I think the American people are going to be 80-20, 90-10 against boys playing girls' sports.
How do you feel about that male boxer claiming to be a female beating up the female boxer at the Olympics? How do you feel about that?
Right. I really would because that's a big issue that the left is pushing right now. Many on the left are pushing, not all, but many on the left are. It was funny. I was reading an article the other day of what's that actress who? Well, she's not an actress. She's a fitness guru. Who? Did y'all see that story? She moved from what's her name? She moved from California to Florida, and she's what? Michaels? Is there?
I don't know.
Okay. Anyway.
Oh, is it Jan Michaels? Is that her name?
I'm not into fitness, so I wouldn't be able to bring that up.
There are people yelling at the radio right now. But her last name is Michael. You would know her face if you saw her. You would know her. She's very popular, fitness instructor, guru. Is that her name?
Jillian Michaels.
Jillian. Yes. Yeah. Anyway, she was quoted as saying, she said she's a lesbian, and she's got children of all different ethnicities. Some she's adopted, I think. And she said, I fit the demographic of of a left winger about as good as you can, about as perfect as you can. She said, and but even I have left California because it's gone nuts out there. Yeah. She had more colorful language than that, but you know what I'm saying. She said, it's just the secular progressive agenda is destroying the state of California. And again, this woman is not even not even a conservative or a Christian, she's just common sense. But you've seen her, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've seen her, but I didn't know she was from Lebanon. So
Yeah. Lebanon. I didn't know she's from Lebanon either.
she was Lebanese. Isn't that what you said?
No. I see what you did there, Steve. Not going to comment on that. Going to move on. All right.
All right.
Next story.
This is a serious story. Actually, the Inspector General at the FBI has.
What's that person's name?
They don't even give his name. He's just the Inspector.
How do you know it's a he? May
Could be a they.
Could be they.
Yeah.
Okay, so he's Inspector General at the FBI.
General. Every federal office has an inspector.
Right.
Has an Inspector General's
Kinda
office.
Kind of like an auditor.
Right. Right.
Internal auditor.
That are not. They're independent. Anyway.
They're there to try to prevent agencies from becoming corrupt.
Well, they're not doing well. The FBI, the Inspector General, has found that the FBI is failing to report suspected child abuse cases to appropriate law enforcement agencies in about 50% of the cases. In a review of 327 cases involving allegations of sex crimes against children, the Inspector General found no evidence that the suspected child abuse was reported to appropriate local law enforcement agencies in 47% of the cases. And when the reports were made, they were made within when the reports were made, they were made within the 24-hour period as is required by the Justice Department in only 43% of the cases. Now, the FBI has been doing a lot of work. It's been mostly political work on behalf of Joe Biden and the Democrats, but they haven't been being very good at getting suspected child abusers.
Is there anything in the story that would indicate what the problem is? Is it an attitude towards those crimes or what?
Go ahead.
Where are you getting this information?
This is AP.
AP. But that's the Inspector General. You're quoting the Inspector General.
Quoting the Inspector
You're
General.
not saying "Thus says Steve Jordahl."
No. This is the Inspector. The statistics the AP has pulled up from the Inspector General's report. Now they were supposed to revamp their reporting and all their policies after the Larry Nassar debacle. Remember the team doctor of the USA Gymnastics who was serving multiple life sentences for abusing gymnasts.
That was stunning. Yeah.
But apparently it hasn't. They're acknowledging it's made many mistakes. So there's that.
Yeah. Next story.
All right. Just in time for your election season, we're finding a growing number of Americans. A growing increase in COVID. As 2024, the summer draws to a close, U.S. finds itself once again grappling with a surge of COVID-19 infections. So what this article and this opinion piece, Aaron Solomon is saying is that we might need to go back to the COVID pandemic measures, the mask mandates and the closures and all that kind of stuff, because it's serious, folks. They finding that my tongue is firmly in my cheek there too.
Yeah.
Mask mandates, social distancing guidelines, restrictions on large gatherings, they've all but disappeared. But the virus has provided ample opportunities to spread because we're not doing those things. So it's coming back.
While the warnings may be coming back, but the American people will not follow those guidelines again. They won't. It's not going to happen.
I didn't think it'd happen in a blue state.
No, I've seen a few people around the town where we live. They have masks on, that kind of thing. But other than that, people that I talk to, I'm not going to put up with this nonsense.
Well, I think with COVID, some. All right, mask out in public. And let me just warn us. Don't necessarily judge somebody as being COVID fanatically scared. There are people out there like that. Yes, we do know, and there are people, and they have phobias. A lot of people they're germaphobes, and they don't want to be that way, but that's just the way they are. And so I make fun of the person who drives around in their car by themselves with the mask on too. I mean, we all do, right? Or you're outside and ride your bike, you got a mask on. Come on. But some people have phobias, okay? But there are other people who have maybe they've been treated for cancer and they have a compromised immune system, and they're worried about getting even the common cold or a flu or something like that, which might make them sicker than otherwise, and so they wear a mask. They wear a.
So they have a legitimate.
They have a legitimate reason to wear a
concern.
mask, and you don't know.
That's a whole different issue than mandates, though.
Huh?
That's a whole different issue. Than
I know,
mandates.
but I was just explaining how you just don't be quick to judge people necessarily as crazy or
Democrat.
Are they synonymous, Steve? All right. So what did you say about the mandates? Yeah, I agree with Fred. I don't think mandates are coming back for COVID, not unless you got a lethal strand where it's even then it'd be hard to.
Here's they're ramping up the fear though already. Last week, the Associated Press put out a story that the big vaccine producers are now shipping it out, millions of vaccines.
Like these vaccines for COVID you're talking about?
Yeah. And now I'm starting to see ads on TV, families talking about, I'm going to get my shot.
I haven't heard anybody be seriously ill for a long time or certainly not
the virus
die from COVID in 3 years or so.
The virus is mutating, but it is weakening as it goes. So
like the
now
flu.
it's like a case of the flu, maybe a longer lasting case of the flu or a bad cold. And I talked to Dr. Peter McCullough, who's a cardiologist who's been all over the vaccine issues. And he says that the vaccines are coming out, they're very reactive. So they find whatever strain is in the ascendance, I guess, and they start working on the vaccine. The vaccines that they're putting out now, the strains are almost gone, down to like 10% of the cases that would be affected by this vaccine.
But that's been the case of the flu shots, too.
Well, no, flu shots, they actually anticipate what the next generation of the flu is going to be. They use mathematical models to figure out how the virus is going to mutate.
I couldn't do that. That's why I didn't make it into medical school.
That was the one reason.
Those what you're talking about, those mathematical equations.
Yeah.
Those were sent me in a different career path.
No, I just think when you across the nation right now, there's a high level of skepticism about all the medical warnings out there, a very high level.
Right.
And
what did Mark Zuckerberg? You have that story? Did y'all talk about it yesterday?
I think we did talk about it yesterday, but we can talk about
it.
Well,
give us a synopsis.
Mark Zuckerberg has written a letter to to Jim Jordan, where he has admitted that the federal government pressured Facebook to censor information that was being put on their platform with regard to COVID, mostly. So that was one of the things he made. He also admitted that in 2020, they shadow banned all of the news stories about the Hunter Biden laptop. He said while they were fact-checking
he admitted to it.
Admitted to it, but he said they probably wouldn't do that again. And then the third thing he said in his letter was that he's, the Zuckerbucks that have been spent on election stuff, they all went to Democrat precincts and such.
Right.
And he says, well, it was all bipartisan, but the appearance is there that we were helping only Democrats. I put appearance in scare quotes there. He says he's no longer going to give any money to election issues.
In the give credit where credit's due department, Mark Zuckerberg deserves a lot of credit here. The founder of Facebook. It's called Meta now, isn't it?
It is. Well, Meta's the
for him to own up to the failures of his company during the COVID scare, and do it. Basically, he's saying they were taking instructions from Dr. Fauci and the CDC uncritically, and they were censoring people talking about alternative or shadow. What do you call it? Shadow
banning.
Yeah, but in essence, it's censoring. And he's saying basically, Mark Zuckerberg's saying, I will never do that again. I'm not going to give money just to liberal groups on politics. He's not going to do that again. And what else did he say? He's not going to do.
The money and the COVID stuff, and then he.
The Hunter Biden laptop story.
So it is. I suppose it could be courageous, but he is also responding to questions that you've ever been to see in a congressional interview where they say, I'll get back to you with the answers to those.
Yeah.
This is one of those letters where Mark Zuckerberg is answering following questions, following some of his testimony.
I'm suspicious of the timing.
I understand. Well, maybe my praises needs to wait. But I'm just saying, At least he's admitting those
Yep.
things in letter form
Yep.
that we just discussed. All right, we're out of time. Thank you for yours. We'll see you tomorrow. Have a great day, everybody.